Good morning, everybody. Once again, thank you for joining us today for our last session for the financial statements. I hope you're nice and warm wherever you are. Right, so for the session, again, just the same as we had before, all you're muted, the cameras are turned off. You will get CPD hours for the duration of the webinar, but you have to stay for the full duration. If your signal is lost, please exit and enter again. I will keep an eye on the questions if there is coming through an issue on my side, but otherwise just enter and exit again. And then a recording will be made available after. Then for the session, please use your question chat panel like the one on the right-hand side you can see. And if you can maybe just take a moment to see, it might look a little bit different on your side because we're going to have a few questions and prizes that I'm going to give away today. So you will have to have access to that. So please just have a look and see if you can find it. And again, if you have any other questions, please put them in the questions pane. All right, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Ninka and I'm the product manager for the financial statements, and I'll be covering both these agenda items today. I know I've scheduled 2 hours. I don't anticipate these topics to take that long to go through, but if you do have any questions, it might take a little bit longer. All right, so with that, we're going to start with a question. Like I said, my marketing team has asked that I have a few questions and they will send you a Take Lot voucher for the one that's first right. So please get your fingers ready for the question. And the first question I have, and I hope you've joined our previous sessions as well, is in the retained income session, what should you do if your retained income is not balancing in accordance with the balance check? So there's a few things that you can do. So please post your answers in the question, and then I'm going to give it like 30 seconds, and then we can have a look at the answer. I'm going to stop sharing my webcam in the meantime for anybody that's got bandwidth issues. I don't see any answers coming in yet. So I don't know if you were not in the previous sessions, maybe not sure. But remember, you have your balance check. If your prior year retained income didn't agree. I've got one answer here, not exactly right. Here we say. So I've got one. Open your balance test, refresh your cash flow. So refresh your cash flow will be if your cash flow is out. What if your retained income isn't balancing? Yeah, we've got an answer. The first one, and I hope I pronounce it right, is Guku Kumalu. Perform opening balance recon and pass the journal entry. So definitely that is a correct answer. So you will win the prize for this one. I have some others coming in as well. Check the mapping of your accounts are correct. Re-import your trial balance from Ufense. Then I have referred to the equity statement and align with prior opening retained income. You guys are all right, but the first one was, I hope I pronounced it right, Guku Kumalu. So you'll be the winner of our first prize. All right, so with that, let's get into today's session. The first one is, I just want to make a note here that we can reach you afterwards, Guku. So what we're going to cover today is accounting policies. I'm going to refer a lot to IFRS and also to SME and the difference between the two. But the base of it is very much the same. So even if you just do IFRS or just do SME, the relevance of it will be for both. So firstly, and I'm going to start with the latest changes that has come through with the accounting policies because it is very relevant to all of us. So, excuse me. So this was an IFRS, and what happened is there was a change in IAS 1 that required it from being material accounting policy information that you should do significant accounting policy detail. And it is a small change, one-word change, but it made quite a big difference in how you should approach your accounting policies. So just to give you an idea of how these projects normally work with the ISAB, is the project gets added. So this one was added in 2018, then it was issued in 2021, and then it was effective for annual reporting periods beginning or after 1 Jan 2023. So what we then normally do at Caseware is if it is effective for annual reporting periods, 1 Jan 2023, it means our first year ends that really would have this effective is 31st December, if you have a 12-month period like most of us do. So we will then make sure that before that 31st December 2023, that you have the latest disclosure that you require. We don't often do early adoption, if ever, just because it becomes very, very hard for clients to know which ones to use. It becomes very hard to maintain. So normally we will release it just before it becomes effective to you. Right. So, so with a change like this in the accounting policy, it will potentially mean that you have to have completely new accounting policies. So if you have done an IFRS set, I hope you have re-looked at it all. And then also you might have a change in accounting policy as well, as required by IAS 8. So what did this change say? If we look at the standard, paragraph 117 of IAS have been updated as follows and says, an entity shall disclose material accounting policy information. Accounting policy information is material when considered together with all the other information in an entity's financials. It can reasonably be expected to influence decisions that the primary use of the general purpose apps make on the basis of those financials. So it really, if you look at this just in general, it is the concept of materiality is not a figure. It is really together with all the other information. If you leave it out, it will influence decisions negatively. So that's the easiest way to put it. Furthermore, the amendment also clarifies that the accounting policy information is expected to be material if, without it, they will be unable to understand the other information. There is also some illustrative examples of this accounting policy information that is likely to be considered material to be in the entity's financials. So they did give us some examples to work through and to look for. But it is also important to notice, and this is the balancing act of accounting policies, if it is disclosed, it should not obscure material accounting policy information. So we do get big set of IFRS, and then they have lots of accounting policies, but not everything there is necessary material to the user. If you leave it out, they're almost not even going to notice. It's not going to make a different decision for them. And then by adding it in, it actually obscures the financials and it becomes very big and not adding the value to the users. So with the paragraph 117 change, to support this amendment, the board has also made an amendment to the IFRS practice 2 statements making material judgments to provide guidance on how to apply the concept of materiality to the accounting policy disclosure. So practice statement 2 had 4 areas that I would like to highlight. The first one, again, is the focus on materiality. Is that it defined the information is material if omitted, misstated, or obscuring. It could reasonably be expected to influence decisions that the primary user of general purpose financials make on the basis of those reports, which provide financial information about a specific reporting entity. So very clear again with the statement and with the standard where materiality falls in. Then as well, what it has got to address there is specific reporting entity. Even if you have entities that are the same nature, maybe a reseller or a car wash or a manufacturing company, the accounting policies might be similar, but it will not be the same because each entity is very unique in how it runs its business. So it must be made entity specific, and the relevance must be based on the nature or magnitude or both of the items to which the information relates in the context of individual entities' financial reporting. So very important that it should be specific. Then one concept that it also have in practice statement 2 is an entity will consider that the primary users are expected to have reasonable knowledge of business and economic activities and to review and analyze the information, including the financial statements, diligently. Primary users include both existing and potential investors, lenders, and creditors. And then the last topic in practice statement 2 was in assessing whether accounting policy information is material to its financials, an entity considers whether users of the financials would need the information to understand other material information in the financials. So if we look at these 4 elements, what we found the most difficult when we assessed this was the middle two, the specific reporting entity and the primary users to have reasonable knowledge. It is always critical for us to make sure in the template that we drive the entity-specific information. So because we provide a template with accounting policy, we've had feedback from regulators that it is boilerplate or it's not entity-specific. But really, that is just your starting point. And we've also invested a lot of time in guidance. And we also have a lot of time that we spend buttons. So like if you choose this one, certain paragraphs, which one? If you choose the other button, the other chooses on. But it really is just guidance on what your accounting policy should be. It is very important for the users to then go back and to have a look at it and see, is it relevant to your entity and also to your users. What was very critical for us is the reasonable knowledge of business and economic activities. And when we discussed this with our content forum and our clients before we did the implementation, it became clear that this is a point that there was different interpretation of what it is, because not all primary users have financial background or qualification. So when we started out, we said primary users have reasonable knowledge. So we would at least expect them to have some financial background, understand the industries, all those. But when we spoke to our, like I said, to our users, we realized that some of the your shareholders or your investors might not have that kind of knowledge. So this was definitely a challenge to implement it in such a way that if your primary user maybe needs more accounting policy detail, what will that mean? So up until now, everything that I've discussed was IFRS, and it has been a change that has come through the last time. So the SME, because I do know a lot of us do SMEs as well, you will see the block that I highlighted there, they still refer to significant accounting policies, like the IFRS standard was before. But then with the new ED coming out, the ED is currently out and we expect the standard to come out shortly. We do see the change also there that it will be material. So again, small word change, but the SME standard will follow the IFRS standard in changing from significant to material accounting policies. So it doesn't mean because the SME standard is still referring to significant that your accounting policy should not be entity specific. It should not be considered to obscure the financials. Those have always been relevant to any accounting policies. So there is much value that you can add there by making sure that it's entity specific, it's for your users, and it is for the investors that might look at the financials. Then for this change, how did we implement this? So if you have accounting policies, and I know most of us are number people, so to read through accounting policies is maybe not our forte enough. But what we did here is we said we took the approach to critically apply some principles to previous accounting policies and therefore take some details out and also amend it. For example, one of the principles that if it is required by IFRS, it's required by IFRS to disclose as an accounting policy, I mean, obviously it should be in, we can't take that out. Another one was that you always be applicable to that type of transaction or event. In other words, does it always apply and therefore make it unnecessary to disclose? Then we would take it out because it is almost, it's expected that you should have that knowledge. As ISO 1 and the framework expect you to have basic knowledge, we assume that you would understand IFRS. So if yes, then you would exclude it. If we look at the intangible assets, for example, the first section are removed due to the fact that it's always applicable to the scenario, and therefore it can be removed because it becomes irrelevant. The expenditure due to research was removed, and we included a more detailed section on development costs because we felt that was more relevant actually to the section than the expenditure on research. And then if we have a look at the first two coral items, we provide an example to indicate to the users that they must provide entity-specific information. For example, the ones that are on the square brackets, we have the state, the asset, example, internally developed. So that is not accounting policy for your specific entity. You will have to go and change it to make sure that it is relevant. At the end, this must tell a story of how the items is accounted for, and therefore, as a whole, must make sense and have a very logical flow. If you're one of our users or not, I do believe it is important to re-look at the intention of the standard setters and provide a better quality output to our end users. So this is just a screenshot of example what we did. So like I said, one of our biggest challenges was what does means reasonable knowledge. So what we've decided to do in the software, we kept the old accounting policies and we have put in the new ones. So it changes in completeness. So you either have all the new ones or you have all the old ones. So if you are an entity that has had that your users you feel might need more detail, they need definitions, they need more I want to say information that is always applicable to that specific accounting policy, because they are not as educated financial, and therefore we've leave those in. So if you feel that it's being that will cause difficulty for your user to understand, we've kept in the old ones. But you can't have a PPE old and then intangible asset new. You either do all new or all old. And this is how we adopted for it. I also just want to highlight, this is something, so we look every year at the IRBA, the JSC monitoring report, and to look at the feedback there, and even globally. And these three items have come up year after year: the lack of entity-specific accounting policies, the boilerplate accounting policies, and what is significant to the user. So I really do feel that this is important to look at, and with the new IFRS that has come out, it gives you the opportunity to really look at it. And it might be a shift for you as well as your client, just because we're so used to putting in more and more and more, but it really can obscure the financials and add less value to your users if you don't have it, if you have an overflow of accounting policies. And I am a financial person, so for me, it provides invaluable opportunity to articulate the story of your entity. While the numbers themselves are clear, it is through the narrative that the picture transforms into a vivid and comprehensive representation of the story of your entity's reporting period. So I would say we always shy away from the accounting policies, but it really gives an opportunity, if anybody picks up the financials, to read through it and to tell the story about what this company is doing, more to what the numbers are. So embrace it, it's part of our financials, and it's definitely not going away. Right, with that was my accounting policy piece. I'm just going to have a quick look if there is any questions. I don't see any questions coming through. Okay, so with that, before I start with the roll forward and the update. Okay, great, I see Linda, you were off, but you're on again. Great, I'm glad you sorted. We're going to do another question. And this question, so fastest fingers first. There's a different place where you can find collateral for Caseware, name 2. So through the whole series we've talked about, we shared QR codes. You can get articles, you can get videos, you can search certain things. So name 2 places where you can find collateral for Caseware. Before you call support, where you can maybe have a look, where you can maybe do some training. And let's see what comes in. I've got 1, but you might have to give me 2. So I'm not going to say which one you gave me. So give me 2. Name 2 places. I've got another one, but it's only 1. Oh, here we go. Tomia. Well done, Tomia. You were first. YouTube and the Caseware website. So we have YouTube. All these videos are on there. So please go have a look. If you've missed anyone or want to go back, we have Caseware community. We've got Facebook. We've got LinkedIn. So there's lots of different places. Tomia, congratulations. I'm just making a note for you as well. Linked it. Well done. Thank you guys for participating in that. All right, with that, we're going to move on to roll forward. and an update of a file. I have touched on this in the previous session briefly, but I do think we are at the end of our journey, so this would be very relevant as we move along. So firstly, I want to talk just in general about our release cycle. So we have our biggest driver for us to do a release is compliance. If it's a new standard, if there is a new taxonomy for XBRL, that is what drives us to release. And then obviously with that becomes technical enhancements, improvements, or anything like that. But when we look at when we release, what is the most ideal time for our clients, we really look at the compliance side of it, like the IS1, when does it become effective? So normally our release is in around October, November, and I will talk about that now. But our next release will be end of July, and there might be some of you that was part of our beta webinar to see what we've changed. And the reason for our release now in July is because of the ISA 600 standard, the group audit standard that changed. And our clients have asked us, some of our clients, that they would like that before the December requirement, because they do interim financials. And for that reason, they would want that assurance and audit documents before then. So we always try to release together from an assurance and financials perspective, just because we know, so we have some clients that use both, we have some that just use the financials, we have some that just use the audit, but we always try to keep those in sync, and almost always we will release together. So that is why that release is in July. It is not our normal cycle. The normal cycle will be in October, November. And the reason for that is there's a few things that coincide with it. And the one is the XBRL. So we get a new XBRL taxonomy and validation that normally is effective from the 1st of October. So it just makes sense to align with that. And then you have one install that you can do everything on. So for this year, it will be a bit different. We're doing the July release now, which will be the big compliance change. Not a lot of changes for you that were in the beta webinar for the financials on the compliance side. More improvements and technical enhancements. But for the October release, it will then just be XBRL. So what that means is, and in general about XBRL, is if you have a file, and this is now best practice, you will never update that file while you are in progress with it, right? If you started on a specific template, I always recommend that you finish on it. XBRL is a little bit different. In the one hand, XBRL, you don't have to update every year, because the taxonomy and the validations of CIPSI stays valid for a few years. I think it's 3 or 4 years, and then they start to deprecate 1 year or another. But what we have found is that there is sometimes issues when you then validate just because you're a few years behind. So the XBRL updates separately from your financials. So say I had a 2022 file, and now I release in July. I download the template and install it, and now I open my financials. I don't want to update those financials because I'm in the middle of them. But then what will happen, you'll see that there's an XBRL that will run. It's like a pop-up screen that will come up. It won't ask if you want to. It will just take a little bit longer to go through the taxonomy. What that does is it updates the XBRL in the background of that file. So at any point in time when you open a file, it looks on your computer what is the latest template that you have installed, and updates the taxonomy appropriately. So you don't have to run a financial statement update to get the latest XBRL in, and it doesn't affect anything else in your financials. So when we have now the July release, the question is, do you update or don't you? Do you wait for October? It really is up to you. The requirements of compliance that's in the financials is not something that is effective now. It is effective next year or the end of this year. So you can only update in October if you want to, if you only do the financials. But remember, as a firm, it is not recommended that you have different versions of templates going around. And also with the working papers that we will release will already be on 2024. So then some of your files will update or not. So it has to be a firm decision. But I would say look at your business as normal and see when it's the most suitable for you to update. And if you have a compliance requirement to update, then rather roll it out to the whole firm than just one. But like I say, that is normally our release cycle, and it is driven by compliance. Right, so if we move into roll forward and update of the file. The first thing that I want to show you is the roll forward of a file. I've got the screenshot, but I'm quickly going to open my file and just jump to that. Right. So if you are in your Caseware file, you have this option here, year-end close. So if I click on that, that's the screen that will come up. And you have some options here. Normally, you don't really click any of them except if they're relevant to you, but normally you just do select a new file and you click on OK. So what this process does is if I have a 2023 year end, it rolls all my numbers to the previous year and it makes it 2024. This doesn't update your financials. It only does a roll forward. So it only moves, or a year end close. It only moves your figures from the current year to the prior. So like I said, it stays on the same file. There's no update that is happening. Then you have, if I jump back to my slides, sorry, I've now lost my slide. There you go. So then you have, so that's a roll forward. Then where do you find the latest template? Because now I've done my roll forward, or I want to start the roll forward process, but I also want to update to the latest template. And that was now one of the questions is where do you find all the information on our success community? And this is where you will find your software. So again, if you are a firm and you have a firm template, then you won't come and download it here. Your firm champion will, and then they will distribute it through the firm. But if you don't have that situation, then you'll log into our Caseware community and you'll click on My Software, and that is where you will find the latest software that is available. Right, so now you've gone ahead, you've installed it. Always important to remember, if you have working papers and your templates, always install your working papers first and then your templates. So if you do an installer like here, it will be packaged like that. So if you click on the run, it will automatically do that. But if you, for example, format your computer because you're getting a new computer or something like that, your IT personnel might not know that they need to reinstall it. So you'll still see your Caseware icon probably on your desktop. And then if you just install that, then your templates won't work. So you always have to install both and in that order. Like I said, especially if you have a new computer, then sometimes it's a bit of an issue. It is also very important where your files are saved. So I know some of us are in the habit maybe to save them on your desktop or your documents, but it's really important to put it in this data folder. So if you're in your C drive on your data folder, because if you don't, then some of the scripts and stuff that runs in the background don't run correctly. And I actually experienced myself, especially if you do Xparallel as well. But in general, this is where if you open the file, it goes and look, like I said, the scripts of the template and all of that. So make sure that you save your files in the right location. Right, so now after I've opened, I've got now an old file and I've now roll forwarded or not, you can, then you will get this screen if you have the new working papers installed. And what it does, again, this is not changing anything on your financials. If you have a file in 2023 and you have 2024 installed, it won't open until you've done this file conversion. It's not an update, it's a file conversion. So it is just like, if you think about Word, when Word creates a new update and there's maybe a new feature or something, it doesn't change your Word document. It only changes your Word and how it looks in your features. And this is the same. So when you do get this, you have to run it, but it is very important to know that you can't go back. So if you are if I've converted a file to 2024 and my colleague is only have 2023 installed, if they open their financials or their file, they won't be able to access it. It will give you like it's a higher version error. So important to know as a firm, you have to make a decision on this, or then if you're all by yourself. Right, then you have 3, let's call it update options, although the new file is another update option. And I'm going to explain what each of them mean, that you understand the different options. So firstly, you have a new file. So I would recommend to do a new file if you have a new client, obviously, because you don't have any of the information. Or if you, so you can choose to do a new file or a file new from existing. If you have an existing client, but the file cannot be relied on. So if I go to file name from existing, it's exactly that. You can't rely on. If you have an older file, so I know some of you don't update every year, but it really is important for various reasons to update at least every 2 years. We only support 2 years in general. When we do our testing on our site, because we only support 2 years, we also only do testing for 2 years. So if you don't, we don't go back to 2016 and test from there on. It just isn't feasible. So it's very important to stay on the old one. We have had quite one of the reasons why clients don't want to do that is because they feel they're going to lose a lot of information. And we really have done a lot of work to ensure that you don't lose a lot of information. So like the one is on the file name from existing, you'll have data retention on your input field. So everywhere where there's yellow cells, those data should retain. So 2 years ago, if you did file name from existing, you basically just retained your InfoStore and your trial balance, and it was just plugged into a new template. But now we're actually retaining all the yellow cells as well. So yes, you still will have to go back and edit it, especially information that might be specific to that entity, but you are retaining a lot of information as well. So file name from existing is also used a lot when you do a firm template. And the reason for that is what a file name from existing do, it basically takes the template as a new file. It creates a copy of that for a new file. And then it takes all the information that was in your old file and it put it in there. So like I say, your input cells, it will put in there. Your trial balance, it will put in there. And also your information store, it will put in. It will retain that. But like your accounting policies, it won't. And the reason for that is because you want a firm template, or you want the template as the base and then put in the prior information. You don't just want to roll forward what you had last year. And that's why that is how the file name from existing work. Then you have also the update option, and you have two options there, and I'll show you the screen now. The one is the full replace, which is basically the same as a new file with the InfoStore and the trial balance to be included. And then you have the section update, which is the second option. This one has the most data retention. And how this works is, it basically, when we change the note, so say for example, we change the new standard note like we did every year, then, or maybe that's not a good one. Let's do this. So PPE, we haven't made any changes to PPE. Then that note will retain exactly how it is. In the background, we have settings to say, go and look, is this version the same as the last one? Yes, it is, don't update it. If we've made a change to a note, then it will update the note. So if you've tailored trade receivable and we have made a compliance change or an update or improvement, then your trade receivable note will be replaced. But your PPE note that we haven't touched, that won't be replaced. So this is a very good way of updating your financials. Although if you do a firm template, then we would suggest a file name from existing. Otherwise, you're not going to have your customization that your firm author has done in it. So then we suggest a file name from existing. But if you do the update option, it is important to take note of what sections have changed. So it's always important for us that you attend the webinars and read the release notes, because that really creates the expectation of what should change in your file and what not. But it's especially important if you do the update options. We also try on this one, and this is also something that we're working on, to update on the lowest level. So if you think again about the trade receivable note, then you have a table and then you have different sections. So if we just change one section, then we would try just to replace that one section and not update the whole trade and other receivable note. It does depend on where the change is. Sometimes it's not possible, but we really put a focus on that. And then also what we've included there is an override indicator on all fields, even if in design mode. Because we did get a lot of clients that then they say, well, I've updated and I've rolled forward and now this field's pulled through wrong. And then if we go and have a look at the file, it looks like the file a lot of it has been toggled, and that's why it's not retaining, which it obviously won't. So we made it more visible for you to see where it has retained and where not. All right, let me just quickly jump back into my financials. And then I'm just going to show you the different options in here. So the first one that I spoke about was file new. So that one you will get there. And then if I talk about the file new from existing, it is if I put in a name there, then you have this create file and import data. So like I say, if you do a firm template, If you can't rely on the previous file and you want your template as the base of the information put on top of it, then those are the options that you will use. If you want to do an update on the set, the first time that you open it, you'll get the screen. But if you have closed it or you didn't want to update on that time at that stage, you can find it in the check for update section. And we'll just wait for that screen to come up. And here you'll have the two options. You'll have the new and replace, and you'll have the update of the financials. Right, so here I have an SME set. And if I open that, you have the new replace and you have the update. And then you also have the option to update your probe and your tax computation if you want to with it. So if you read through this, you'll get to understand the difference between the two. We try to make it quite clear. We do sometimes not have the second option available. So if we've made quite a big change on our SME files about 2 years ago. So if you come from a file before that, then you will be forced to do a new or replace. I do anticipate when the new SME standard come out, I think it will be effective in 2 years' time or so, we probably will do a new replace as well, just because it is so much information that change, but actually to do an update doesn't make sense and become very, very complex from a technology point of view. And for you to know that what has changed. So normally we'll have these. If you don't have it and you only have the first one, it does mean that we are forcing you to do a full replace because for that reason. Right, and then while I am on the screen, I also just want to show you, you've got the notification manager here. And you might sometimes see it with a red bell. So I'm just going to go to my next slide. So there's my file new from existing and update. And here we have this notification manager. And what we do there is if we have any important information that we need to send through on the product, then we will send a notification through there. So since we released November last year, we haven't had any information come through there, so you probably wouldn't have seen it. But the aim is if there is something like there's a patch or something important like that that we want to communicate to our clients, we will do that in the notification manager. Like I said, we haven't had to do it. And this is then, it's more like if we normally send out emails, it doesn't always get the right people, or maybe your antivirus block it, or whatever the case might be. So this is just another form of communication for us. Then something else that we've also worked on last year is the data retention view. So after you've updated a file, if you go to document, you'll see there a menu that says data retention view. And this will give you a view of those 4 categories that I have there. There's also on our community an article about it. You can read more about it. But this is aiming to help you to after you've updated, to identify the areas where we have changed something. We also work hard on our release note that whatever we have in our release note tie back to this. So if it's a ACP 001 change on here, then if you go and read the release note, you will have an understanding of what has changed. So if you do a lot of financials, then obviously you might do this with the first or second one, and then you'll know what to expect. And you don't have to do it every time, but it really is important to know what has the expectation of what will change in an update. Then we have another function, the super insert function, which I hope all of you use when you build customized note, or you need to. And it's there at the top is a green plus, and it have different options. You can put a new note, you can do a text section, you can do a paragraph, you can do a table. So I just want to highlight that because this customization is very important, that how your file is going to behave on how you use this function. So the most important thing here is if you do a note to stand on the top of the heading or the subheading and use this function. Again, if we then update a section in a section, then only that section will update. If you've done it in a different place, then you might lose that work because it's part of a different section of the background. So no, it's quite technical, but I do want to encourage you, if you do use this function, always as a rule, best practice, just stand on the note heading or the subheading to make sure it's on the right level and to have maximum data retention when you do update. Then another option that you have is restrict updates. So if you right click on any note, you can click on the restrict update and then it will have a little lock next to it. So this is something that you can do, especially if you have a big customized note and you don't want it to update. It is, however, very important to know if we have changed something in that note, it won't come in. So again, if we've maybe made an improvement, we've now made an improvement on your details of property, for example, then that won't come into the note. So it is a way, like I say, when you customize, you've read through the release notes, you feel very comfortable that you don't want to update that note, you can lock it, but do know that it's then, it won't update, it won't touch the note. So you have to make sure that that is the right decision for you. You do have the options. So say, for example, I've now updated my file and now I've used that little lock. I've restricted it and now I realize I actually do need the new note. I actually, I've looked at it and I need to copy it in. You can copy in any note from the library or from another file. And how you do it is you right click on it, you go to content and version management, you get new version and you have the option of library or other Caseware file. And then what it will do is either if you choose library or other Caseware file, it will bring in that standard note and you have the option to bring in the figures or not. It is very, very important that this function should only be done from a file on the same template version. So again, if you now go back and you have a note that you've built 5 years ago and you copy it over from that file, the cell references have changed in the background, the keywords have changed in the background, and you will not be very you will not be successful when you update or anything like that, and you might break some items in your file. Right, so that is it on update. I'm going to check if there's any questions. I've got one, Oscar. Is there a way to undo the strict update note? So yes, so Oscar, like I explained now, if you want to now unrestrict it, you can again just right click and you can click on the restricted, it will unrestrict it, the little lock will go away. Or if you have updated the file already and then you want to bring in the template, then you can do it in this way. But then just before you do this, you must also unrestrict it. Okay, just going to give it a second and see if there is any other questions, especially in regards to the updated different options. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So please, if it is, so, keep on typing. I'm just going to wrap the session up. I have two more polls questions that I have to ask. And then the first one is, so please type, also previous session that I've done, which companies are required to prepare financial statements? So the keyword here is which companies. So if you can type into the chat for me, which companies you believe should be part of, should prepare financial statements. And let's see who gets this one. I've got here two answers, which is any listed company or listed companies. It's not completely right, so I'm going to look. Got another one, listed companies. Let's see if somebody gets it. Jan Pieter, well, thank you, well done. PTY Limited, all companies. All companies have to prepare financials. Right, so Jan Pieter was the first one that got that one right. Thank you very much for that. Right, guys, as always, I'm going to send you a survey. I'm not going to send you, actually, I'm going to put it in the chat. We are going to send you a survey also afterwards about the whole series. This, like I say, is the last one. It's the last one of the financial statements. It's the last one of the Get Ahead. It's really been a privilege to share this time with you, and I hope you find benefit in it. So I really would like you to complete the survey. If you get the mail, it take 5 minutes to just complete it for us. We are looking, and we definitely want to get your feedback on what you've experienced, what you would like differently, if there may be other topics that you would like us to cover, and then we can take it from there. So please, if you have time, I'm quickly just gonna get the link to then I can put that in so long in the chat. Right, so that is the link to the chat. And then I've got one more question, and I've put in here the topics. So I would like to find out, and I've got the session numbers in the side, so you can just put the session number. What session was the most impactful to you? What have you not known before? What have you learned about? You might have not seen all of them, or hopefully you've watched the recording, but which one do you feel has changed your life the most? And if you can tell me why. It always is good to know why that one. Is it something that you didn't know before? Is it something more accounting that has resonated with you? So Tomia was first year. So Tomia, you had a price already, so I'm going to wait for the next person. But I do like your answer. Session 4, particularly the flow, the cash flow, and how to complete it as well as the approach. Yeah, the cash flow is new, and definitely we had a lot of feedback that helped a lot. So if you have not watched session 6, that is a more detailed of the cash flow session. So the session 4 was like an intro, session 6 was the full cash flow. So then the next person that comes out is Carl Besaidenout. So you will get the next prize. And he said, session 3, I'm glad you can remember that far ahead, that far back. The drill downs help you a lot to trying to see what is mapped to which accounts. Great. I do see the cash flow a lot. So I'll definitely give Angela that feedback because that's her passion. So definitely we'll share that with her. Great. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining me. And like I said, well, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter session today, just because of the topics and how much we want to cover. If you do have any more questions, you're welcome to still post them in the chat. I'll probably keep it open for 5 minutes or so. But with that, thank you and have a lovely day ahead.